Hi, I'm Andrew Scheps. I'm here at BSG in Brisbane, and we're here to talk about the Pro Tools Dock. Basically, it's a one fader control surface, which as a phrase might sound like, well, why would you want a one fader control surface? And I would answer that quite often, one fader is more than enough for me. I've got a mix going, I just need to ride the vocal, I need to bump up one drum fill, and they're very, very fast ways, both on the attached iPad screen or shortcuts in Pro Tools to assign a fader to this fader very, very quickly. So I can just say, attention this fader, do a little ride, move off and be done with it. And it gives you just enough of that interface where if you're not comfortable doing rides with a trackball or a mouse, that you can just grab the fader, do exactly what you want. And me being old, I grew up with faders, so I love actually grabbing a fader. But that said, sometimes with a larger control surface, you're in this weird in-between thing of too many faders to scan across really quickly and read exactly what's there, but not enough faders to have everything up all at once. So unless I'm in a situation where I need to build a balance very quickly across a bunch of faders, or I'm mixing a live recording, something like that, a lot of times I won't turn on the S3 and I'll just stick with the dock because it's all I need. I only really need the one fader. It's also got full transport control down here. And one of the great things about all of the Yukon-based surfaces is you can program a lot of the buttons to do anything you want. So, like for instance, the default for this left-hand transport button is basically return to zero, which is go all the way to the beginning of the session. That's not something I need a button for most of the time, but there's a shift function for that button that's back and play. And there's a preference in Pro Tools, and I'm assuming in other DAWs, so I only really use it with Pro Tools, where you can back up a certain amount of time set in the preference, and then it will play. So if I'm writing a vocal, for instance, I can listen to a vocal phrase go by, then hit back and play, it'll back up 5 seconds and play it again, and I can do the ride, oh, didn't like it, back and play again, or you can tap it multiple times to back up 20 seconds, hit it 4 times. And I've actually reprogrammed the buttons so that the button without the shift key is back and play, and then with the shift, it's the return to zero. So I keep all the functionality, but I can do whatever I want. You get 4 soft keys here on a touch strip, 4 soft keys here in a touch strip, so I've got my first touch strip button to always go to locator 1, which for me is always the beginning of the song. I just am very consistent like that. So the ability to kind of reprogram what it does, but have all of these huge buttons right in front of you is awesome. Fader feels great. Touch sensitivity always works. Never have a problem with that. In the latest versions of Pro Tools, they've actually added the ability to use this monitor knob here to control a master fader in your Pro Tools session. So if that master fader is the outputs that feed your speakers, now you've got a monitor section built into the Pro Tools dock, and that was just done with software. So things get updated all the time. And then the integration with Pro Tools Control on the iPad is awesome because it knows where it is. So like the way the iPad is right now, we're showing a transport at the bottom, but if you switch it to soft keys, now just in the Pro Tools Control app, you've got soft keys to do all sorts of things, and these are all definable in Yukon. They can be functions that you can't normally really get to just with Pro Tools key commands, or they're buried in a menu, or in a way they're macros because it'll do 2 or 3 things at a time. But not only do they show up here, but then you've got soft key buttons down here, and they even take on the color of the function that is assigned to them. So right there, that bottom right, soft key on the iPad is save, and it's red, and I've got a red button here that is save, which also goes with the save button here. They're all doing the same Yukon command, so things can be in different places. And then also the ability to use the Pro Tools Control. If you switch to any of the views up here, you get full screen versions of things. So this is the tracks. You can go to mixer, and one thing I'll do a lot is I'll have the mixer page showing here, but I use VCAs to control my mixes, so I have a VCA for every type of instrument, a VCA for drums, for bass, guitars, brass, horns, lead vocal, background vocals, whatever. They're scattered all over my session, so if I'm looking on the mixer, I've got to scroll. If I'm looking at tracks, I've got to scroll. But if I go to the mixer and then go into the settings, into the untitled setup, I can say just show me VCAs. This session's only got one, but then what I get is I get a mixer of VCAs, or I can go into the tracks view and just see VCAs. And then I can do things like mute and turn up and down huge groups of instruments from here, have my attention track on the fader, and still have everything in my session available on the screen or on the S3 if I'm using it. So it's a great way to kind of focus different parts of the control surface. And then obviously if you use it to edit plugins, you get soft knobs here that will control plugin parameters and things like that. It's incredibly versatile and does a lot, but I think the Yukon integration is what makes it endlessly upgradable and customizable. So yeah, I love it. And one very cool thing that's pretty recent is, until recently, the Pro Tools Control app was iOS only, but it is going to be, or about to be, or already is, depending on when you watch this video, Android compatible as well. So you'll have options, especially if you're going to use some of the newer control surfaces like the S1 or the S4, to populate multiple screens on your Yukon control surface for a lot less money than having to get a bunch of iPads. So that's pretty exciting too.